there are so many cases at the Keller Center that stick with us. One that comes to mind is actually a multiple victim case. There was more than one child in a family who had been molested by someone, and the youngest child is the first one to have disclosed. And she disclosed to her mother, and upon making a disclosure that a family friend had molested her, the mother asked each of the other 3 siblings if anything had ever happened to them. And at that point, all 3 who were older acknowledged that they too had been molested by that same person. All 4 girls were interviewed at the Keller Center. We started in order of who disclosed first, and the youngest girl came and gave a statement about what had happened. And for her, she had kept quiet for a little while, but her disclosure was fairly straightforward, and it was not difficult for her to come and talk to us at the Keller Center. The same was true for her slightly older sibling. These girls were all between the ages of 8 and 14. So the 8-year-old and the 10-year-old were interviewed first, and they talked about what had happened to them with relative ease. They were comfortable at the Keller Center and talked about what happened. The oldest of the siblings, I actually think she was about 16, did disclose, and during her interview she became very tearful and talked about how she wished she had disclosed earlier, because if she had, then she could have protected her 2 younger siblings from having been molested. And for her, that was the hardest part about making a statement at the Keller Center. The 4th young lady that we talked to came in, and because of her age, at age 14, she should be somebody who's a little bit easier to interview, but she actually had a very difficult time talking. She knew why she was there. She knew who we were there to talk about, and she was able to say that. But she couldn't talk at all about what acts had happened to her. And so what we talked about in her first interview was why. What was it about what had happened that made it hard for her to talk about? And what she said was, if she told, that she felt that people would think that she was so disgusting that people would never want to look at her again and nobody would ever want to touch her. And she just couldn't give voice to what had happened to her. So our team, who was very eager to move on this case because there were clearly multiple children at risk, delayed doing anything with contacting the suspect or filing the case in criminal court, because the young lady had said that maybe a little bit more time. It had not been her idea to disclose. It had come out because her younger sibling had disclosed. With a little bit more time, that maybe she would be able to come back and talk about it. So we had her back about 2 weeks later. And we started, and she said, I really want to do this. And she said that on tape, I really want to. I just don't know if I can. And we proceeded with the interview, and she couldn't say it. She couldn't say it again. And she repeated, I'm just so disgusting. Nobody will ever want to talk to me. Nobody will ever want to touch me again. And by the end of about an hour-and-a-half interview, in which she was able to write down the kinds of things that had happened to her, and then I read those things out loud, and she confirmed that that was what she had written, I remember doing something that I never do. I remember reaching across the table and touching her hand at the end of the interview, hoping that in some way I was communicating to her that people would still want to touch her, that it would be okay. And that case has been filed by the district attorney's office, and the suspect has been arrested. And all 4 young women, by reports of others, are doing well and on their way to healing.